Hello and welcome to another Commerce IQ live stream, where every week at this time we go into different topics about retail, e-commerce, and the economy for anywhere from about 10 to 20 minutes. And today we have a new topic for you, and that is the state of fulfillment, kind of an update on where a few of the major players stand on their investments in fulfillment, what they're focusing on, what their strategy is, and also their current fulfillment capabilities and what's being done with that. So let's get into it. So first off, just kind of an update about how to think about the comparative strength and scope of fulfillment across some major players, right? So Amazon, of course, in the lead, if you want to think about it that way in terms of its fulfillment capabilities. And this is all in the US with 110 dedicated fulfillment centers and then well over 1,000 combined different types of sortation centers, delivery centers, kind of add-ons to that to those capabilities. So lots of square footage on Amazon's front. Walmart at about 31 dedicated e-commerce fulfillment centers. Target actually fulfilling anywhere from 75 to 90% of its e-commerce orders through its stores directly. And then Costco has 11 fulfillment centers, but those are just general, distribution and fulfillment centers. And they serve to, not only supply Costco warehouses with all of its goods, but also serve e-commerce as well. So it's not broken out as directly as some of the other players. And then when you consider how they're investing, a lot of that is tied directly to e-commerce growth. Not all retailers have their Q2 results out yet. Amazon does; the other ones don't. So what we're comparing here is really more of their Q1 growth. And in terms of e-commerce sales growth, Amazon actually slightly negative for a couple quarters now, negative 3% e-commerce growth for US. Walmart only slightly positive at 1%. Of course, Walmart, their e-commerce in general far less saturated than Amazon, being mostly pure play e-commerce. Target still experiencing about 3% growth, and that's on top of about 50% e-commerce growth last year. So still growing off of very strong year-over-year comparisons. And then Costco actually the strongest at, perhaps the least e-commerce developed out of these retailers, but still growing at about 8% versus last year for its most recently reported quarter, which I think is its Q3. They're a little off calendar versus the others for its fiscal year. And the strategy for each is different. We'll talk about kind of the expansion plans for fulfillment in a moment. But for Amazon, as we'll see, given that they are the leaders in fulfillment in the US, their strategy is actually to pull back. They've essentially said, we've heavily invested. We thought, and as a lot of retailers thought, maybe a year or 2 years ago, that there was kind of this big permanent jump forward in e-commerce, that things were going to be permanently at a higher level of e-commerce sales, by as much as 5 to 10 years. I would argue, I personally would argue that we have seen a jump forward in e-commerce capacity, capabilities, and even in e-commerce sales levels, but not by 5 years, right? The distance we've jumped ahead, now there's kind of been a pullback in e-commerce, will be smaller than by 5 years. So Amazon has overestimated its e-commerce, the need for fulfillment capacity, and now it's saying, we're going to pull back a little bit. We're going to delay. We're going to cancel some projects for fulfillment centers, and just kind of grow into our existing capacity. Walmart is saying, they weren't as heavily invested, I think, in expanding as Amazon was. And they also still have a lot of room to grow for their e-commerce just because they're not as scaled as Amazon is. And so they're saying, our fulfillment capabilities are going to be essentially experiment rapidly and leverage omnichannel. That means leverage our stores. It means leverage our e-commerce fulfillment centers. Of course, Walmart has about 4,000. You can see it there for Target. Target has about 1,900 stores. Walmart has about 4,700 stores, right? That means that there's a Walmart within, just like a 10-minute drive of 90% of America, essentially. And Walmart's committed to using both its stores and its e-commerce fulfillment centers and third-party delivery and first-party delivery any way it can to be wherever the shopper wants to be. So it's very shopper-centric in its fulfillment model and very much trying to use its stores as a differentiated asset. Target is similar to Walmart in its strategy, but I would argue that Target is even more focused on stores than Walmart is in terms of developing its e-commerce capacity. So the vast majority, I mean, pickup is huge for Target. That's a huge area that it wants to develop, continue to develop. That took off during the pandemic and it's continuing to do well for Target. So it wants to, aside from e-commerce fulfillment centers and delivery, it really wants shoppers to come to the store, and when they're not, it wants to fulfill from the store. So Target is very focused on the store, I think in part because it sees the store not only as a differentiator, but as a big means to drive impulse shopping and to drive kind of those trend-driven moments where shoppers get really excited about something and they put it in their cart and they buy it. And that's easier to do if they're ideally in the store or picking up from the store, or at the very least, if they're putting so much effort into the stores, they can fulfill via delivery from the store. Costco, on the other hand, their strategy is, in contrast to almost all other major physical retailers, we're growing significantly in our brick and mortar sales. Not just now when we're seeing this brick and mortar surge kind of in the middle of 2022. That's a one-time thing. But even before that, commerce and after that, commerce is growing, or Costco is growing its physical store sales quite a lot, in excess of 10% frequently. And then, of course, e-commerce still has a lot of room to grow as well because it's less scaled for e-commerce compared to a lot of other retailers. So his strategy is don't rock the boat. We're not gonna necessarily have this dedicated e-commerce centers, e-commerce fulfillment centers just for e-commerce. We're actually going to keep it integrated with our business. We're not going to break it out because we don't want to do anything that will jeopardize the success of our stores. And the reason Costco can afford to think that way is, again, because its stores are still growing so rapidly, which have also, on a separate note, given itself a lot of cushion on the profitability front as well. A bit of a separate point, but part of the reason Costco has not been feeling as much of a profitability crunch as a lot of other retailers is because their sales are still growing so fast that lower profit margins can still be made up for somewhat by volume in terms of year-over-year absolute profit comparisons. So let's dive into a little bit more about Amazon and a little bit more about Walmart when it comes to fulfillment. I mentioned that Amazon, specifically, they are delaying or canceling, 16 plus warehouses this year. Keep in mind a few stats here. That's because they doubled their fulfillment capacity during the first 2 years of COVID. But now for Q1 for Q2 and Q1, they've experienced 2 consecutive quarters of profit loss. And they are thinking, okay, how do we boost profitability? Well, one way we can do that is not to have excess capacity lying around that we're not using. So we're going to delay these facilities. Another thing that Amazon is really focused on the fulfillment front is same-day delivery. So in 2019, they had a big push to drive same-day delivery through fulfillment centers that would actually reach a significant portion, of its ASINs online. COVID, just the profitability formula, their algebra for that really got thrown out of whack during that time. And since then, they've made progress again on same-day delivery profitability and on pushing more items for same-day delivery, especially for Prime members in particular. But it's still not where it was at pre-pandemic. So they're making progress, but it's actually not where it was 3 years ago. So Amazon's very hungry for ways to, how do we enhance same-day delivery? How do we build that out? How do we make that more profitable? Because you have to consider rising costs, rising inflation, rising labor costs on Amazon's side that have all kind of set it back in terms of same-day fulfillment. Now they're focused on transportation, right? So if we can, our fulfillment centers, they're essentially saying are already fairly efficient. We have room to grow in efficiency and driving down costs in transportation that can help us out for same-day delivery. So that means switching from third-party carriers like UPS, FedEx, to more and more owned capacity, kind of those Amazon vans that are increasingly ever more common across the U.S., right? So they're investing in continuously in more of those and building out their first-party transportation capacity. Again, kind of switching back to how they overinvested in fulfillment. Again, they were thinking that we're going to see this big boost in e-commerce for about 5 to 10 years, 5 to 10 year growth condensed into the pandemic. It didn't happen to be actually that much of growth now that there's been this pullback. And so they're saying, maybe we moderate the growth of our fulfillment centers to match the growth of the underlying business. This is all according to Amazon's CFO back for their Q1 2022 earnings call earlier this year. Interestingly that they say that because, as you saw, e-commerce growth for Amazon right now in terms of e-commerce sales from the US is actually slightly negative. So I wonder, I don't think it's permanent. I think that e-commerce growth will continue to pick up. I think the reason that e-commerce growth is almost flat for Walmart, for Target, for Amazon is essentially because you're seeing this one-time shift back to in-store shopping. And then once that shift is complete, you're going to see e-commerce kind of resume its more natural growth trajectory. Though still, I think at a slightly higher absolute levels than it would have been pre-pandemic had the pandemic never occurred. So I don't think it means that they're going to get rid of their fulfillment, their fulfillment expansion plans, but they will taper back significantly. Walmart, on the other hand, Walmart is really pushing forward in terms of new technological innovation, and I think they're actually doing some things that are pretty interesting that arguably Amazon could look at. And maybe want to develop a competitive, a competitive view on, or at least, pursue something in response to what Walmart is doing, because Walmart has some impressive tech coming out. They're opening 4 new fulfillment centers, and again, they have 31 in total, but 4 new fulfillment centers specifically focused on kind of what their vision of a high-tech fulfillment center is. And they're opening these over the next 3 years. They say that these 4 fulfillment centers alone, these high-tech ones, can reach 75% of the U.S. with next day or 2-day shipping. Of course, consider that Walmart, their e-commerce in general, their e-commerce levels, absolute sales levels, are far less than Amazon. So I think that stat might speak to Walmart's still relatively undersaturated e-commerce market compared to Amazon. That stat about 75% being able to fulfill across the U.S. just from those 4 centers, but still an impressive stat. And the way these new fulfillment centers work is they're essentially designed with robots in mind rather than humans in mind. And that is that they have these kind of vertical, width, length, depth, vertically integrated storage centers within their fulfillment centers that are navigated essentially entirely by robots, where every square inch is maximized as much as possible. It means you don't have to have room for humans to navigate. You don't have to have room for people to get around items, pick them up. It's all densely packed, for hundreds of thousands of square feet, essentially. And it's you can kind of see in that image there, these robots go along these rails, both laterally and vertically. They find the right. First of all, they find. In terms of receiving, they're loaded up with certain items, from when a truckload comes into these fulfillment centers. Then they find the proper place to put it. They drop it off there. Then when an item is picked, or when an order is created, these will automatically find their item in the categorization where it is in this robot-driven fulfillment section, pick it up, and deliver it to a relatively stationary employee who can just take it, and is also delivered at the same time a package custom made and personalized for that shipment, and they can just ship it up, close the box, and send it on for shipment. So they're not necessarily running around. The people aren't running around the whole fulfillment center. All that is being done on these automated rails and robots that can do it. And I think that's a part of Nap Robotics, is the company that Walmart is using to do this. Now, this is interesting because I feel like this is kind of an evolution of Walmart's earlier pilot with AlphaBot and Alert Innovation, where they were testing kind of a similar automated inventory storage and robotic retrieval system that was designed for in-store pickup. So they were testing this in Salem, New Hampshire several years ago. I think it's still there. And you essentially, if it wasn't for delivery, but if you wanted to pick up, it was this kind of this add-on facility next to and adjacent to a supercenter. You could drive through, and instead of the stationary employee picking up an item, packing it up, and then sending it off for shipment, they would just hand it to you directly for pickup. So it sounds like Walmart is still innovating, still potentially experimenting with different vendors, different partners to get this moving, and to kind of advance the capabilities and the technology here. It also sounds like Walmart might not be entirely set on these are our permanent tech partners that we're going to use for all advanced fulfillment capabilities moving forward. They still have multiple partners that they're testing the waters with. Now, another cool thing to really draw out here that both Walmart and Amazon are doing is that they are exporting their fulfillment to other retailers. All right. So when you consider what do you do in an environment when you have excess capacity, whether that's traditional fulfillment or whether even that's just delivery drivers, one thing you can do is export it to other retailers who might not have advanced capabilities, especially smaller to mid-sized retailers, right? So Amazon has recently, relatively recently, launched same-day delivery, or last month, for same-day delivery for as a partnership for retailers that want to use Amazon's fulfillment capacity and capabilities, even when shoppers are shopping on their own site, right? So say you're a shopper and say you're a Prime shopper and you're shopping GNC. Now GNC has this partnership where you can have a buy with Prime option next to their items online, and when you click on that, if you're an Amazon Prime shopper, Amazon can fulfill that order either through fulfillment by Amazon, which is how this partnership started. So, inventory that retailer actually stores with Amazon, and that Amazon can ship from its own facilities, or that retailer can have that inventory stored locally at stores, and Amazon's delivery service, they'll come by, they'll pick up the order from the employee, and that's that picture there, and then they'll deliver it to the shopper. But either way, it's Amazon exporting some element or a lot of elements of its fulfillment capacity to other retailers. Currently, they're now offering same-day delivery. This new faster mode is being only piloted in about I think it's about 10 or so zip codes, and again, it's only available for Prime members. Walmart is doing something similar where, not quite as advanced as Amazon in the sense of having fulfillment by Amazon to that same level, but they are exporting their delivery drivers, if you want to think of it that way, to some pretty major retailers, actually like Home Depot, for instance, where, a shopper will put in an order. Normally it would be fulfilled via delivery from a Home Depot store, but instead, or maybe for pickup, but instead now Home Depot can pack it up and just hand it off to a Walmart delivery driver, and it can be delivered instead of just being available for primarily for pickup. Currently, that's available in 300 Home Depot stores. The entire program, called Walmart Go Local, is available in about 1,600 stores. Not Walmart stores, but different stores that Walmart's in partnership with the expectation, and that was as of May of this year. The expectation is that it will be 5,000 stores by the end of this year. And Walmart, they have Home Depot as a customer, but they're also focused on small to mid-sized players who lack fulfillment capacity. And they're also doing a few other things to partner with third-party aggregators like Delivery Solutions, so that even if a small to mid-sized retailer isn't directly partnered with Walmart, they might be partnered with Delivery Solutions, who then uses Walmart to fulfill the order. And so the reasons why Amazon and Walmart are doing this, exporting fulfillment capacity, it basically becomes a profit center for them because they can, gain additional, they can charge service fees, processing fees, payment fees, delivery fees for these companies, for these businesses, and kind of add to their own profit. They can scale efficiency. So especially when you consider Walmart, who they're not quite as scaled as Amazon for a lot of their fulfillment operations, a lot of their delivery driver operations. If they're also leveraging, fulfilling for other retailers, that helps expand their business and scale use of that efficiency faster. And then also, again, on that similar note, it uses their excess capacity, especially when you're having kind of a pullback in e-commerce, which we're having now, which I think is temporary for 2022. So the key takeaways here, just to recap. The big players, especially Amazon, Walmart, and even Target as well, they are best positioned to succeed in advancing fulfillment, especially as we saw how they're partnering with smaller to mid-sized retailers to use their own fulfillment rather than growing that natively for the smaller players. Fulfillment morphs to a profit center, especially in a saturated capacity environment where you have potentially excess capacity, and then you have retailers looking to, how can I actually make money off of this? How can I use this to not just be a cost center, but actually use this as a service that others would be interested in to actually make some profit and help cover some of that cost. And then finally, if you're, as a brand, tech and profitability are key to engage in fulfillment with retailers. As retailers, especially the big, retail e-commerce management platforms like Walmart, like Amazon, like any big retailer that isn't D2C, that aggregates brands together, as those advance and as those really are positioned to succeed in e-commerce, over the coming years, brands to keep pace are going to have to invest in tech and automations to maintain profitability. And profitability is key because the more profitable you are, the more margin you have to play around with to make sure that you can invest more in streamlined delivery as fulfillment becomes ever faster and ever more efficient. That's important for brands to keep in mind. One way that you can do this, and this is something that that we're heavily involved in at Commerce IQ, is, for instance, for Amazon, revenue recovery via shortages and chargebacks, right? You think of eliminating chargebacks or at least understanding their root cause and filing, keeping on top of your shortages with Amazon. All of that can be automated. We can automate all of that for you. If you're skeptical, you can just try us out. We can boost your Amazon first party profit margin by 1 percentage point within 4 months, or your money back. If you're interested, just check out that link, and that is blogs.commerceiq.ai/more profit now. So just keep a note of that, check that out, and we can boost your profitability, which again kind of ties into keeping pace with ever advancing fulfillment capacity and capabilities from core retailers like Amazon or like Walmart. So check that out. And again, if you liked what you heard today about fulfillment, we do these presentations almost every week, unless we have some other webinar going on. So just check us out at noon Eastern or 9 a.m. Pacific on Thursdays, and we'll be back next week with an entirely different topic, which I believe will be on online grocery next week. But have a great rest of your week, and I will present to you later.